Marcus Chen had always believed that the universe had a twisted sense of humor. After 15 years of military service across 3 different star systems, dodging plasma fire and alien claws, all he wanted was to retire to his small farm on Terra Nova's outer rim. He had saved enough credits to buy a modest plot of land where he could grow vegetables, maybe raise some livestock, and forget that the galaxy was full of species that wanted to kill each other. The notification arrived on a Tuesday morning while he was fixing his broken irrigation system. The holographic seal of the Galactic Inheritance Bureau materialized above his wrist communicator, official and imposing. Marcus wiped grease from his hands before accepting the transmission. Marcus Chen, former sergeant, Terran Defense Corps. The hologram displayed a stern-faced alien with blue-tinged skin and 4 arms. "That's me," Marcus replied, already dreading whatever bureaucratic nightmare was about to unfold. "You have been named as the sole beneficiary in the will of one Zephyr Stormclaw, deceased. Please report to Station Omega-7 within 30 standard days to claim your inheritance." Marcus stared at the hologram. The name meant nothing to him. He had never heard of Zephyr Stormclaw in his entire life. "I think there's been a mistake. I don't know anyone by that name." "Records indicate no error. The deceased specifically named you as beneficiary. Failure to claim inheritance within the allotted time will result in forfeiture to the galactic state." The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving Marcus standing in his half-repaired field with more questions than answers. He had never been to Station Omega-7, barely knew it existed somewhere in the Centauri Nebula. The whole situation felt like a scam, but the official seals and documentation that followed seemed legitimate. 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself aboard a cramped passenger transport, watching the swirling pink and gold gases of the Centauri Nebula through a porthole. Station Omega-7 emerged from the cosmic fog like a mechanical spider, its arms stretching out into the nebula to harvest exotic matter. The place had a reputation as a frontier station where the law was more suggestion than rule. The docking bay reeked of industrial lubricants and alien cuisine. Marcus made his way through crowds of traders, miners, and species he couldn't identify to the inheritance office. The clerk, a tall insectoid being with compound eyes, examined his identification with mechanical precision. "Ah, yes, the human beneficiary. You are expected. Please follow the guide." The guide turned out to be a floating sphere of metal and light that led him through increasingly narrow corridors into the station's older sections. They stopped at a massive door marked with warnings in 17 different languages. Most of them mentioned danger, containment, and something about extreme caution advised. "Your inheritance awaits," the sphere chirped cheerfully before zooming away. Marcus pushed open the door and immediately understood why Zephyr Stormclaw had been a complete stranger to him. The chamber beyond was enormous, with walls that stretched up into darkness. At its center, coiled on a platform surrounded by force fields and monitoring equipment, lay the largest living creature Marcus had ever seen. The dragon was pure white, its scales gleaming like fresh snow under the artificial lights. It had to be at least 40 meters long from nose to tail tip, with wings that could probably span half a city block when fully extended. Its head was the size of a small shuttle, and even unconscious, it radiated a presence that made Marcus's combat instincts scream warnings. A holographic display activated as he approached, showing the image of an elderly human with wild white hair and burn scars across half his face. "If you're watching this, I'm dead, and you're probably confused as hell," the recording began. "My name is Zephyr Stormclaw, though that wasn't always my name. I was born Jacob Morrison on Earth just like you, fought in the Rigel campaign just like you, got tired of the fighting just like you." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Rigel campaign had been classified. Very few people knew the details of what had happened there. I found this beauty 50 years ago on a dead world in the Vale sector. Last of her kind, the locals said. They were going to kill her because of some ancient superstition about white dragons bringing bad luck. I couldn't let that happen. She's been my companion ever since. Though companion might not be the right word. Partner, maybe. Family. The hologram gestured toward the sleeping dragon. Her name is Moonwhisper, and she's been in forced hibernation for the past 6 months while I tried to find someone worthy to inherit her. The Terran databases flagged you as someone with the right combination of combat experience, moral flexibility, and stubborn refusal to give up. I'm betting my life's work that I chose correctly. Marcus stepped closer to the force field barrier. Up close, he could see the dragon's breathing, slow and steady. There were old scars across her hide, evidence of past battles. Now, here's the thing, the recording continued. Moonwhisper isn't just any dragon. She's what the old texts call a star dragon, capable of surviving in the vacuum of space, traveling between worlds without a ship, and generating enough firepower to level a city. She's also incredibly intelligent, probably smarter than both of us combined. And she's been hunted by every major power in the galaxy for the past 50 years. The hologram's expression grew serious. They call her cursed because of her color. White dragons are supposed to bring disaster, death, bad luck. It's all nonsense, of course, but superstition runs deep in the galaxy. Every bounty hunter, military force, and fanatic cult wants her dead or captured. I've spent 5 decades keeping her safe, but I'm old and dying, and she needs someone younger to protect her. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. All he had wanted was a quiet life growing vegetables. I know this isn't what you signed up for, the hologram said, as if reading his thoughts. But I've watched your service record. You've never abandoned a mission. Never left anyone behind. I'm hoping you won't start now. Moonwhisper has been alone for too long. Her species lived in family groups, and she's the last. She needs someone to care about her, and frankly, the galaxy needs her alive. The recording paused, then added, Oh, and there's a substantial monetary inheritance as well. 50 years of mercenary work pays well. The account information is in the sealed files. Should be enough to buy your own planet if you want one. The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving Marcus alone with the sleeping dragon and the biggest decision of his life. He could walk away right now. The monetary inheritance alone would set him up for life. He could return to Terra Nova, buy his farm, and pretend this never happened. But as he stood there looking at Moonwhisper, he found himself thinking about loneliness. He had been alone since leaving the military, telling himself he preferred it that way. Here was another solitary being, the last of her kind. Hunted and hated for something she couldn't control. The force field control panel was clearly labeled, with instructions in Standard Galactic. Warning messages flashed as Marcus approached, but he ignored them. He had made his decision the moment he realized what Zephyr Stormclaw was really asking of him. He deactivated the containment field. Moonwhisper's eyes opened immediately, revealing irises that shifted between silver and deep blue like nebula clouds. She lifted her massive head and fixed her gaze on Marcus, studying him with an intelligence that was unmistakably sapient. When she spoke, her voice resonated directly in his mind rather than through his ears. You are not Zephyr. Her mental voice carried undertones of sadness, wariness, and something that might have been hope. Marcus found he could respond the same way, thoughts flowing between them without effort. Zephyr died. He left you to me. I'm Marcus. Moonwhisper rose to her full height, her head nearly touching the chamber's ceiling. Even sitting back on her haunches, she towered over him. Her scales seemed to shimmer with their own internal light. You smell of war and weariness. Why would Zephyr choose you? Marcus considered the question carefully. Because I understand what it's like to be tired of fighting but too stubborn to give up when something matters. The dragon studied him for a long moment, then lowered her head until they were at eye level. And do I matter, Marcus of Terra? Looking into those ancient, intelligent eyes, Marcus felt something shift inside him. His quiet retirement plans seemed suddenly small and selfish compared to the responsibility being offered to him. Yes, he said simply. You matter. Moon Whisper's mental presence seemed to relax slightly. Then we should leave this place quickly. Zephyr's death will not remain secret long, and there are those who have waited decades for the chance to claim me. As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in pulsing red as automated systems announced incoming ships. Marcus's military training kicked in immediately, his mind racing through possible escape routes and defensive positions. How many ships? He asked, moving toward the chamber's exit to assess their situation. 12. No, 15 now. More arriving every minute. Moon Whisper's mental voice carried grim amusement. Word travels quickly in the Centauri Nebula. Half the bounty hunters in the sector are converging on our location. Marcus peered through the chamber's small viewport and cursed. Ships of various sizes and configurations were taking positions around the station, their weapons powered and ready. Some he recognized as bounty hunter vessels. Others bore the markings of military forces from non-human governments. Can you fight in space? He asked. I am a star dragon. The void between worlds is my natural domain. Moon Whisper moved toward the chamber's outer wall, her claws leaving deep furrows in the metal flooring. But we will need to reach open space first, and they will not make that easy. The station shuddered as the first weapons fire impacted its shields. Marcus felt the familiar pre-battle calm settle over him, his civilian retirement persona falling away to reveal the soldier underneath. Then we make our own exit, he said, pulling his sidearm and checking its charge. Can you breach that wall without decompressing the entire station? Moon Whisper's laugh resonated through his mind like distant thunder. You are more like Zephyr than I first thought. Stand back, new partner. Let me show you why they fear the White Dragon. As Marcus took cover behind a support pillar, Moon Whisper drew herself up to her full height and began to glow. The light started deep within her chest and spread outward, turning her white scales into something that looked like captured starlight. When she opened her mouth, the energy that poured forth was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. It wasn't fire or plasma or any conventional weapon. It was pure creation energy, the same force that powered stars and built galaxies. The outer wall of the chamber simply ceased to exist. Atoms reorganized into harmless gas that dissipated into space. Emergency barriers slammed down to prevent decompression, but Moon Whisper was already moving. She swept Marcus up in one massive claw, gentle despite her size, and launched herself through the breach into open space. The sensation of riding a dragon through the vacuum between stars was beyond anything Marcus could have imagined. Moon Whisper's scales generated a protective field that allowed him to breathe and survive the absolute cold, while her powerful wings propelled them away from the station at impossible speed. Behind them, the bounty hunter fleet scrambled to pursue, their ship's engines flaring as they gave chase. Energy beams lanced through space around them, most missing by wide margins as the pilots struggled to track a target that moved like no ship they had ever encountered. "Where are we going?" Marcus asked, his words carrying clearly through their mental link despite the impossibility of sound in vacuum. "Away from here, to a place where we can plan our next move without being shot at every few minutes." Moon Whisper banked sharply to avoid a missile barrage, her movements fluid and graceful despite her size. "Tell me, Marcus of Terra, how do you feel about extended space travel?" Marcus looked back at the diminishing fleet of pursuit ships and realized his quiet retirement was officially the furthest thing from his future. Somehow, the prospect didn't bother him as much as it should have. "I guess I'm about to find out," he replied, settling in for whatever came next. 3 days of riding through deep space on the back of a star dragon had given Marcus time to reconsider every life choice that had led him to this moment. Moon Whisper flew with tireless grace between the stars, her internal navigation somehow more precise than any ship's computer. They had lost their pursuers within hours of leaving Station Omega-7, but Marcus knew it was only temporary. Word of the White Dragon's new guardian would spread quickly through the galaxy's criminal networks. They finally stopped at an unnamed asteroid field in the Outer Veil, a region so remote that even pirates avoided it. Moon Whisper selected a particularly large asteroid with a hollow center, carved out eons ago by some natural process. She landed gracefully in the improvised shelter and finally allowed Marcus to dismount. "This will serve as temporary shelter while we plan," she said, her mental voice echoing in the cavern around them. "I have cached supplies here over the years." Marcus stretched muscles that had grown stiff from the journey and looked around their new hideout. Hidden behind camouflaged panels were emergency rations, water recyclers, and what appeared to be a small but sophisticated communications array. Zephyr Stormclaw had been thorough in his preparations. "How many places like this did Zephyr set up?" Marcus asked. 17 that I know of, scattered across the galaxy. He was paranoid about being trapped without resources." Moon Whisper settled onto the asteroid's rocky floor, her massive form somehow managing to look comfortable. "It kept us alive for 50 years. Marcus activated the communications array and began scanning for news feeds from the major systems. What he found made his blood run cold. Within hours of their escape from Station Omega-7, every major news network in the galaxy was running stories about the White Dragon and her new human guardian. The bounty on Moon Whisper's capture had tripled overnight. "We're famous," he said grimly, turning the display so Moon Whisper could see it. The dragon's mental presence grew darker as she absorbed the information. "Famous and hunted. The Carillion Empire has officially declared me an abomination against nature. The Viridian Republic is offering 10 million credits for my capture, and the Zealots of the Pure Flame have declared a holy war against both of us." Marcus scrolled through more reports. Each one worse than the last. At least the Terran Federation is staying neutral. For now. But political positions can change quickly when enough pressure is applied. Moon Whisper's tone carried decades of bitter experience. "We cannot simply hide indefinitely. Eventually, someone will track us down." "Then we don't hide," Marcus said, an idea beginning to form in his mind. "We go on the offensive." Moon Whisper's great head turned toward him, silver eyes reflecting curiosity and something that might have been approval. "Explain." Marcus pulled up a galactic map on the communication array's display. "Look at this objectively. You're the last of your species, which makes you incredibly valuable from a scientific standpoint, but you're being hunted because of superstition and fear. What if we could change that narrative? You want to make them less afraid of me?" "No, I want to make them more afraid of making you angry." Marcus highlighted several systems on the map. "Every one of your major enemies has vulnerabilities. The Carillion Empire is in the middle of a brutal civil war. The Viridian Republic just lost half their fleet to a plague outbreak. The Zealots of the Pure Flame are fanatics, but they're not stupid." Moon Whisper was quiet for a long moment, processing his suggestion. "You propose we demonstrate my capabilities in a way that discourages further pursuit. I propose we remind the galaxy why their ancestors were smart enough to fear dragons in the first place." Marcus turned to face her directly. "But I want to be clear about something. I won't be party to genocide or unnecessary killing. If we do this, we do it with precision and purpose." "You sound like Zephyr," Moon Whisper said, and Marcus detected warmth in her mental voice. He had similar moral constraints. It is one of the reasons I trusted him. Over the next several hours, they planned their strategy. The Carillion Empire's civil war provided the perfect opportunity. Both sides had been brutal to civilian populations, and their conflict was tearing apart entire star systems. If Moon Whisper could end the war quickly and decisively, it would demonstrate her power while actually saving lives. They started with intelligence gathering. Moon Whisper's ability to travel undetected through space made her the perfect reconnaissance asset. She could approach planets and ships without appearing on any sensors, observe troop movements and supply lines, and map out the military situation with impossible precision. What they discovered was worse than either of them had expected. The Carillion Civil War had devolved into something resembling medieval savagery conducted with modern weapons. Both sides were committing atrocities, and civilian casualties were mounting into the millions. The Loyalist faction is planning to destroy the colony world of Kepler Prime rather than let the rebels control it, Moon Whisper reported after a reconnaissance flight. 3 million civilians live there, mostly farmers and their families. Marcus studied the tactical information they had gathered. When? 72 hours. They have a dreadnought in position to begin orbital bombardment. Then that's where we make our first statement. Marcus began plotting intercept courses and timing. Can you disable a dreadnought without destroying it? Easily. But they will have escort ships, fighter squadrons, defensive platforms. It will not be subtle. Good. I don't want it to be subtle. I want every military commander in the galaxy to see what happens when someone threatens innocent people in front of a star dragon. They departed the asteroid hideout under cover of a solar storm that would mask Moon Whisper's energy signature. The journey to Kepler Prime took 18 hours, during which Marcus reviewed everything he knew about Carillion military tactics and ship designs. He had fought alongside Carillion forces during the Rigel campaign and knew their strengths and weaknesses. Kepler Prime hung in space like a green and blue jewel, its surface dotted with the geometric patterns of agricultural settlements. Above it, the Carillion Loyalist fleet maintained a blockade formation, led by the massive dreadnought Fist of Unity. The ship was a kilometer long and bristled with enough firepower to reduce the planet's surface to molten glass. Remember, Marcus said as they approached the outer edge of the fleet's sensor range, we want to stop the bombardment and send a message, not start a massacre. I understand the mission parameters, Moon Whisper replied, though I reserve the right to be more forceful if they prove unreasonable. They emerged from hyperspace directly above the dreadnought, Moon Whisper's white scales gleaming against the star field like a herald of vengeance. The fleet's sensors went mad trying to classify what they were seeing. Dragon were myth, legend, stories told to frighten children. The reality of 40 meters of living, breathing star dragon appearing in their midst caused several minutes of complete confusion. Admiral Vex Corin of the Fist of Unity was the first to recover his composure. Marcus intercepted his communication to the fleet. All ships, target the creature, maximum firepower, full spread. Whatever it is, kill it before it can attack. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Energy beams, missiles, and plasma charges filled the space around Moon Whisper in a deadly light show. She twisted and rolled through the barrage with impossible grace, her movements too fluid for the gunners to track effectively. Most of the shots missed entirely, while those that did connect simply bounced off her scales like raindrops. My turn, Moon Whisper said, her mental voice carrying grim satisfaction. What followed was a masterclass in precision destruction. Moon Whisper's breath weapon, that same stellar energy that had carved through the station wall, lanced out in controlled bursts. She didn't target the ship's hulls or crew compartments. Instead, she systematically destroyed every weapon system in the fleet, leaving the vessels intact but completely disarmed. The dreadnought's massive gun batteries simply vanished, their molecular structure reorganized into harmless gas. Fighter squadrons found their weapons offline, their missiles inexplicably inert. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Corellian loyalist fleet had been reduced to floating scrap metal with very nervous crews. Admiral Corrin's voice came over the open channels, shaken but defiant. "Whatever you are, creature, you have just declared war on the Corellian Empire. We will not negotiate with monsters." Marcus activated his own communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Marcus Chen, guardian of the Star Dragon Moonwhisper. We have not come to negotiate. We have come to deliver a message." He paused, letting that sink in across every ship in the fleet. "Your planned bombardment of Kepler Prime is cancelled. Any ship that attempts to target civilian populations will be destroyed completely, not merely disarmed. This is your only warning. You dare threaten the Imperial fleet?" Admiral Corrin's response crackled with outrage. "We serve the Emperor. We follow orders." "Then I suggest you get new orders," Marcus replied calmly. "Admiral, I'm sending you tactical data on rebel fleet positions throughout this sector. You want to fight a war? Fight the people who are shooting back at you, not defenseless farmers." The information packet that followed contained detailed intelligence on rebel ship movements, supply convoys, and military installations. It was the product of Moonwhisper's reconnaissance flights, more complete and accurate than anything the Loyalists could have gathered through conventional means. Several minutes of silence followed as Admiral Corrin and his staff processed the intelligence windfall. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from outrage to cautious interest. "This information, how do we know it's accurate?" "Because unlike your previous intelligence sources, we can actually see through stealth fields and scan inside shielded facilities," Marcus replied. "Cross-reference it with your existing data. You'll find it matches and fills in several gaps." Moonwhisper hovered near the Dreadnought's bridge, her presence a constant reminder of what had just happened. Marcus could feel her amusement through their mental link as she watched the crew scrambling to analyze the intelligence data. "Why would you help us?" Admiral Corrin asked finally. "We're not helping you. We're helping the 3 million civilians you are about to murder." Marcus let his voice carry the full weight of his military experience. "Admiral, you've been fighting this war for 3 years. How much closer are you to victory today than when it started?" The uncomfortable silence that followed suggested Admiral Corrin knew exactly how the war was progressing, which was to say, not at all. "The intelligence we've provided shows rebel vulnerabilities that could end this conflict in months instead of years," Marcus continued. "But only if you focus on military targets instead of civilians. Every time you attack non-combatants, you create more rebels. Every massacre breeds 10 new resistance cells. And if we refuse your generous offer?" There was still defiance in the Admiral's voice, but it was the hollow kind that came from someone who knew they had no real choices left. Moonwhisper answered that question by breathing a brief pulse of stellar fire past the Dreadnought's bridge viewport. The energy beam carved through several asteroids in the distance, reducing them to their component atoms in spectacular fashion. "Then you explain to your Emperor why his entire fleet was destroyed by a single dragon," Marcus said. "Your choice, Admiral." It took 6 hours of debate and communication with Corellian High Command, but eventually the bombardment order was rescinded. The Loyalist fleet repositioned to begin operations against legitimate military targets using the intelligence Moonwhisper had provided to plan surgical strikes against rebel infrastructure. More importantly, within hours of their confrontation with the Corellian fleet, every major news network in the galaxy was broadcasting footage of the White Dragon's intervention. The images were unmistakable. A massive star dragon, glowing with internal light, systematically dismantling an entire fleet while protecting innocent civilians below. "The narrative is shifting," Moonwhisper observed as they monitored news feeds from their new hiding spot on Kepler Prime's smaller moon. "They are not calling me cursed or evil in these reports." Marcus nodded, watching the various talking heads debate the implications of their intervention. Some are calling you a guardian angel. Others are calling you the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. But none of them are calling you a mindless monster anymore. Is this how humans conduct warfare now? Through manipulation of information? When direct confrontation won't work, sometimes changing minds is more effective than changing matter into energy. Marcus scrolled through more reports, noting that several bounties on Moonwhisper had been quietly withdrawn. Though I have to admit, your approach to disarmament was pretty impressive. Over the next several days, they received communication requests from across the galaxy. Some were threats, some were offers of alliance, and a few were surprisingly thoughtful inquiries about Moonwhisper's intentions and capabilities. The most interesting message came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of the Terran Federation's Xenobiology Institute. She was requesting a meeting to discuss matters of mutual scientific interest regarding endangered sapient species. "She wants to study me," Moonwhisper said, after they had reviewed the message together. "Maybe, or maybe she wants to help you." Marcus had looked up Dr. Vasquez's background. She had spent her career working to protect endangered species across the galaxy, often putting herself at considerable personal risk. Her team saved the crystal wing butterflies of Andromeda when everyone else thought they were extinct. The difference is that butterflies do not breathe stellar fire. No, but you're still a sentient being with rights under galactic law. At least you would be if anyone officially recognized star dragons as sapient. Marcus felt an idea forming. What if that's exactly what we need? Official recognition of your sapience and legal rights? Moonwhisper was quiet for a long moment. Zephyr attempted something similar 40 years ago. The proceedings were unpleasant. Several assassination attempts, legal challenges that lasted for years, and ultimately the case was dismissed on technical grounds. 40 years ago, you didn't have 3 million Kepler Prime colonists who owe their lives to your intervention. You didn't have footage of you protecting civilians from military aggression. The political climate might be different now. And if it is not? If they simply use legal proceedings as an excuse to trap and study me? Marcus met her silver gaze directly. Then we make sure they understand that would be a very bad idea. You're not powerless anymore, Moonwhisper. You have an advocate who understands both politics and warfare. And more importantly, the galaxy has seen what happens to people who threaten innocence in your presence. As if to punctuate his point, news feeds began reporting that the Corellian Civil War was ending far ahead of schedule. The precision strikes enabled by Moonwhisper's intelligence had crippled the rebel infrastructure while minimizing civilian casualties. Both sides were negotiating a ceasefire, with the loyalist government offering amnesty and reconstruction aid to former rebel territories. "Your plan is working," Moonwhisper observed. "They fear my power, but they also respect it." "Fear and respect are a good start," Marcus agreed. "Now we build on that foundation. Dr. Vasquez wants to meet? Fine. But we do it on our terms, in a neutral location with full diplomatic protocols. We're not hiding anymore, Moonwhisper. We're taking our place in galactic society." The Star Dragon's mental presence seemed to brighten with something that might have been hope. "And if they refuse to accept us?" Marcus smiled grimly. "Then they can explain their decision to the next group of civilians who need protection from their own governments. Something tells me that won't go well for them." The meeting with Dr. Elena Vasquez took place on Sanctuary Station, a neutral research facility in the DMZ between Terran and Andromedan space. Marcus had chosen the location carefully. Sanctuary Station was operated by an international scientific consortium with strict neutrality protocols and excellent security. More importantly, it was large enough for Moonwhisper to move around comfortably without feeling trapped. Dr. Vasquez turned out to be a small woman with graying hair and eyes that held the kind of intelligent curiosity Marcus associated with the best military strategists. She arrived with a minimal entourage, just 2 research assistants, and a diplomatic observer from the Terran Federation. "I have to admit," she said as they met in Sanctuary Station's main conference chamber, "when I first saw the footage from Kepler Prime, I thought it was elaborate special effects. Star dragons were supposed to be extinct for 1,000 years. "We were never extinct," Moon Whisper replied, her voice resonating clearly through the station's communication system. She had positioned herself in the station's main hangar, visible through the conference room's massive viewport. "We simply learn to hide from species that hunt what they fear." Dr. Vasquez turned toward the viewport, her expression shifting from scientific interest to something approaching awe. "You're beautiful," she said simply. "I've studied dragons from 17 different worlds, but I've never seen anything like you." Marcus felt Moon Whisper's surprise through their mental link. After decades of being called cursed and abomination, genuine appreciation was an unexpected response. "Most beings find my coloration disturbing," Moon Whisper said carefully. "Most beings are idiots," Dr. Vasquez replied bluntly. "White scales on a star dragon indicate a unique genetic mutation that allows for more efficient stellar energy absorption. You're not cursed, you're evolved." The conversation that followed lasted for 6 hours and fundamentally changed Marcus's understanding of what Moon Whisper truly was. Dr. Vasquez's research had uncovered evidence that star dragons had once been the galaxy's most advanced spacefaring civilization, capable of interstellar travel without ships, communication across vast distances, and energy manipulation that made current technology look primitive. "Your species didn't just build cities or ships," Dr. Vasquez explained, projecting holographic images of ancient ruins. "You built star systems, moved planets, created artificial suns, engineered entire ecosystems. The crystalline nebula isn't a natural formation. It's a star dragon construction project from 15,000 years ago." Moon Whisper was silent for a long time, processing this information. "I remember fragments, dreams perhaps, of flying between worlds with others of my kind. I always assumed they were fantasies born of loneliness." "They're genetic memories," Dr. Vasquez said gently. "Your species has been alone so long that you've forgotten what you once were. But the knowledge is still there, locked away in your DNA." Marcus felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. "That's why everyone fears her so much. Instinctively, they know what star dragons were capable of." "Exactly. And why the superstitions about white dragons are particularly strong. White dragons were the architects, the leaders, the most powerful of their kind." Dr. Vasquez turned back to Moon Whisper. "You're not just the last star dragon. You're the last member of the most advanced civilization the galaxy has ever known." The political implications of Dr. Vasquez's research were staggering. Within days of their meeting, governments across the galaxy were scrambling to reassess their positions on star dragons. Archaeological expeditions were launched to verify the ancient ruins Dr. Vasquez had cataloged. Xenobiologists were re-examining fossil evidence that had previously been dismissed as impossible. More importantly, the Galactic Council agreed to hear a formal petition for recognition of star dragons as a sapient species with full legal rights. The hearing took place on Concordia Prime, the neutral world where the Galaxy Council maintained its headquarters. Marcus had never seen anything like it. Representatives from hundreds of different worlds and species gathered in a massive amphitheater that could accommodate beings ranging from microscopic energy creatures to massive gas giant dwellers. Moon Whisper entered the chamber with dignity that befitted her ancient heritage. Her white scales had been polished until they gleamed like starlight, and her movements carried the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable with their own power. The chamber fell silent as she positioned herself at the center of the speaking area. Honored representatives, Marcus began, standing at the advocate's podium, we come before this council not as petitioners seeking charity, but as equals seeking recognition of what has always been true. Moonwhisper is not a creature or a weapon or a force of nature. She is a sapient being with rights that predate most of our civilizations. The presentation that followed drew on Dr. Vasquez's research, historical records, and testimony from experts across the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming. Star dragons had been the galaxy's first spacefaring civilization, and their architectural achievements were still visible in dozens of star systems. But it was Moonwhisper's own testimony that proved most compelling. I remember, she said, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the amphitheater, what it was to fly with my clan between the stars we had kindled ourselves. I remember the songs we would sing across the void, harmonies that could guide ships safely through hyperspace storms. I remember the great gatherings where we would share knowledge, art, poetry, dreams of futures we would build together. Her mental voice grew heavy with loss. I remember the silence when the singing stopped, the emptiness when no voice answered my calls across the darkness. For 1,000 years, I have been alone with these memories, wondering if they were real or the fantasies of a mad mind. She turned her great head toward the assembled representatives. Today I learned they were real. Today I learned that I am not the last broken remnant of a forgotten species, but the living heir to a civilization that shaped the very stars themselves. I ask this council not for pity or special consideration, but for the simple recognition that I am what I have always been, a sapient being with the right to exist without persecution. The debate that followed lasted for 3 days. Some representatives argued that granting rights to a being of Moonwhisper's power was too dangerous. Others pointed out that denying rights to any sapient being was a violation of the Council's founding principles. A few suggested that star dragons should be studied rather than protected. That last suggestion ended abruptly when Moonwhisper demonstrated her reaction to being treated as a research subject. She didn't threaten anyone or make violent gestures. She simply began to glow, that same stellar energy that had disarmed the Carillion fleet building within her until the entire chamber was bathed in white light that made everyone's survival instincts scream warnings. I have been studied enough, she said quietly, and the glow faded. The final vote wasn't even close. Star dragons were officially recognized as a sapient species with full legal rights under galactic law. More significantly, the Council passed a resolution declaring any attempt to hunt, capture, or harm star dragons to be a crime against sapience, punishable by the full force of galactic law. The ceremony that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Representatives from across the galaxy came forward to formally welcome Moonwhisper into the galactic community. Ancient scrolls were presented, legal documents signed, and ceremonial gifts offered. But it was the moment when the Andromedan ambassador, speaking for the galaxy's oldest civilization, addressed Moonwhisper directly that brought tears to Marcus's eyes. On behalf of all sapient beings in this galaxy, the ambassador said, I apologize for the centuries of persecution your species has endured. We welcome you home. Moonwhisper's response resonated through the chamber and into the hearts of everyone present. I forgive you. Now let us build something beautiful together. The months that followed brought changes Marcus could never have imagined. Moonwhisper became an unofficial ambassador between species, her unique perspective and ancient wisdom helping to resolve conflicts that had persisted for centuries. Her ability to travel freely between stars made her invaluable for diplomatic missions, while her power ensured that her mediation efforts were taken seriously. Marcus found himself appointed as her official guardian and diplomatic aide, a position that came with substantial authority and responsibility. They established a permanent residence on Harmony Station, a new diplomatic facility built specifically to accommodate beings of unusual size and capabilities. But perhaps the most significant change was personal. Dr. Vasquez's research had located several Star Dragon artifacts scattered across the galaxy, including genetic databases that suggested Moonwhisper might not be entirely alone. Deep space exploration missions were being planned to search for other survivors, using star charts and navigation data from the ancient archives. "Do you really think there might be others?" Marcus asked one evening as they watched the sunset from Harmony Station's observation deck. Moonwhisper was quiet for a moment, her silver eyes reflecting the dying light of the system's star. "I dream sometimes of voices calling across the dark. Whether they are memory or hope, I cannot say. But for the first time in 1,000 years, I have hope that they might be real." Marcus smiled, thinking about how far they had both come from that moment in the inheritance chamber on Station Omega 7. He had wanted a quiet life, and instead found himself guardian to the galaxy's most powerful being and witness to her species' return to civilization. "You know," he said, "when I first inherited you, I thought my peaceful retirement was ruined forever. And now?" Marcus watched a freight convoy pass by in the distance, their ship's lights creating new constellations against the star field. Somewhere out there, conflicts were being resolved through negotiation instead of warfare. Scientific expeditions were uncovering wonders thought lost forever, and the galaxy was slowly becoming a more civilized place. "Now I think quiet was overrated anyway," he said. Moonwhisper's mental laughter was warm and bright, carrying overtones of joy, hope, and deep contentment. For the first time in a millennium, the last Star Dragon was no longer alone. 6 months later, the deep space exploration vessel Starlight detected something impossible in the unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim. Long-range sensors had picked up what appeared to be a structure of impossible size and complexity, built from materials that shouldn't exist and powered by energy sources that defied current understanding. When the first images were transmitted back to the Galactic Council, Dr. Vasquez recognized the architectural style immediately. It was Star Dragon construction, but on a scale that dwarfed anything in the historical records. "It's a city," she announced to the Emergency Council session, "a city built to house millions of Star Dragons hidden beyond the edge of known space." Moonwhisper's reaction to the news was electric. For the first time since Marcus had known her, she seemed almost unable to contain her excitement. "They're not extinct," she said, her mental voice filled with wonder and desperate hope. "My people survive. After all these millennia, they survive." The expedition to investigate the structure would take months to organize and years to complete. It would be dangerous, expensive, and might end in disappointment if the city proved to be nothing more than an ancient ruin. But as Marcus watched Moonwhisper studying the star charts with an intensity he had never seen before, he knew they would make the journey, because somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the Star Dragons waited. And after 1,000 years of exile, it was time for Moonwhisper to come home. Marcus Chen had wanted a quiet life. Instead, he had become part of the greatest adventure in galactic history. As the expedition ship prepared for launch, carrying them toward the unknown reaches beyond the galactic rim, he couldn't imagine wanting to be anywhere else. The last Star Dragon was going home, and Marcus would be there to see her reunion with the family she thought she had lost forever.